Eagles had a lot of people leave. Cowboys have a new coach. Who's more likely to have a repeat season, Dallas or Philadelphia?
Look, I think Dallas will win more games. I think they could be 9-8, but I think they're going to miss the playoffs. So if that's what we're saying, are they going to miss the playoffs again? I think Dallas is that team. But I do think Philly's got a really good chance to repeat as champions. I think they're just as hungry because I think Saquon's had a career essentially of playing bad with a bad team. So I think he's just as hungry. I think Jalen is a great leader, so he's still hungry. And even though they lost these guys, we know they lost a couple of DBs, but they got the young boys that helped them, win that championship last year. Their defense should be just as good at least. Second year under Vic Fangio, maybe even better. And offensively, I mean, we know what they have offensively through the air, on the ground. The one question, and you brought this up, Nick, a while ago, does A.J. Brown get antsy? And I get it. I'm not saying I would get antsy in his position.
He's got his money. He's got his rings.
For receivers, it's not about stacking up rings. I mean, it doesn't really help your legacy anymore. Like, he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He's got a Super Bowl. Now he's got his money. I want to stack up some stats. And that means we need to throw the ball more. So does that become an issue? That's really the only thing I see derailing them of having a shot. I'm not saying they're guaranteed to win it again, but of having a great season and a great shot to do it.
So I have been famously wrong about the Eagles a few times, loudly.
Yeah.
So I was wrong about the Eagles the day after Carson Wentz got hurt.
Oh.
I went on TV and I said, and they announced he had a broken leg, and at that point he was the favorite to win league MVP.
The year they won Super Bowl?
Well, I'm getting there. And I said, I'm like, listen, every other team that makes the playoffs has a better chance of winning the Super Bowl than the team who was in this spot because they have a league MVP and he just broke his leg. It made total sense to me.
That's a fair take.
It was a totally fair take, and then they played it at the parade. This was at a time when First Things First was on at 6:30 in the morning. I'm not sure if anyone other than the Eagles were watching.
Hey, don't.
And so the Wilds makes fun of that era of the show all the time. And so I was wrong about them then. Then, obviously, Bruce said Saquon could have a McCaffrey-esque impact. I thought that was ludicrous. And, smash cut to me in Philadelphia a couple weekends ago.
You got the Super Bowl, right?
No, I didn't get. Oh, yeah, in the interim, yes, I got the Super Bowl right. But nobody remembers that part. What they do remember is me being in a Philadelphia bar 2 weeks ago and a female Eagles fan is cursing me up and down for not believing in Jalen Hurts. So I say all that to say this. Pencil me in for a non-believer for the Eagles this year.
Oh, gosh.
So here's why. I don't think it is, and not non-believer like they're going to be bad. I don't think they're going to be bad, but not and not be dominant the way they were last year. I do not think it is realistic that they are going to get as good of a running back season. Since with a game left in last year, we were like, is this the greatest running back season ever? Maybe. I don't think that part is realistic. I don't think that they are going to be better defensively because of those losses. And it'd be one thing if the two rookies in Cooper DeJean and Quentin, what's the kid's name?
Mitchell.
The first round pick. I forget his name. But
Quentin Mitchell.
Thank you. Quinyon Mitchell. That they weren't playing last year, but they were, you know what I mean? They were a part of that defense that was playing last year.
And
here's
DeJean
the other.
was great,
right.
In the
and
playoffs.
here's the other thing. In the last quarter century, this century actually, if you don't have Brady or Mahomes, here's how it looks when you're defending your title. 7 have missed the playoffs. 3 total have won a playoff game. And the Russ Legion of Boom Seahawks made the Super Bowl.
Okay. Guys, let me tell you what we're not going to do this offseason. We are not going to have a repeat of last offseason and do it now this season. Because I feel like I'm in Bizarro World. Because this is all we did offseason. First off, these stats, a graphic like this is so mind-numbingly absurd. And all I can think of is how we saw graphics like this every single day leading up to the Super Bowl. Let me say that again. Every single day leading up to the Super Bowl. Fangio's record against Mahomes, Andy Reid's record on a bye, Patrick Mahomes in the playoff. I mean, all we did was see endless things like this that sound so smart. They sound so intelligent, so mathematical, so accurate. And then you had little old me being like, guys, let's actually look at what Fangio did against Mahomes. Like, first off, he was the Denver Broncos, so it doesn't even matter. Different team, you know. I mean, does it different decade? Like, what does this actually really matter? Of course it matters. Of course it matters. Everyone yelled at me, and I'm like, no. Who was Fangio's quarterback? Like, do you see he had a quarterback who had like 3 interceptions? You don't think that hurts him? And like on and on and on. And it was like, no. Like they make the argument like it's like a guarantee. Right? Like, it's just like, no, like, this is what happened yesterday. Therefore, this is what's going to happen tomorrow. And it's just like, that's not how these things work. And I've talked about that so much that the past is not an indicator of the future. But again, that's a nuanced statement. It doesn't mean it's binary. We can still use the past as a reference. Okay? We can use the past as a reference, but it's not this automatic predictor. So when we look at these teams of the last, he said quarter century or whatever his exact phrasing was, we ought to actually look at those teams, okay? We ought to actually look at those teams, and the best example is Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks, because that unit really did stay together, at least the core and the heart of it, and we all know they should have won that Super Bowl, okay? I'm not doing the whole shoulda, woulda, coulda type thing, but like, that was their Super Bowl. And that's why I'm on the record saying, listen, Tom Brady has won Super Bowls that he shouldn't have, and he lost Super Bowl against the Eagles. In any other universe, Tom Brady wins that Super Bowl. Nick Foles does not outduel. I mean, Tom Brady played out of his mind. He played good enough to win that Super Bowl, right? If you look at how he played, he should have won the Super Bowl, but he didn't. He lost. And against the Seattle Seahawks, he should have lost that Super Bowl, but he won. So that's actually a great example of that. And, what's really funny, throughout this last season, when you actually got some people who were positive about the Philadelphia Eagles and gave them a chance to win the Super Bowl, people said, this team reminds me of the Seattle Seahawks. And I said, watching this Super Bowl, when I was watching it with friends and family and stuff, I talked about it, and I said, for the Eagles to win, I said this, I believe, that was my viewpoint, this has to be a Seattle Seahawks Denver Broncos game. Not a back and forth. The Eagles can't have a situation where there's a minute 30 to go and Patrick Mahomes has the ball and they're down by 4, because we all know, who knows what type of call is going to happen, pass interference on the 1-yard line. There you go. But and I was just like, this game has to be continued to be dominated by the defense, stopping Patrick Mahomes, and every time the Eagles get the ball, they score. And that's literally exactly what they did. And that is what I said going into that Super Bowl, and that is what I said throughout the entire Super Bowl when I was watching it, which obviously, it's not like I was live streaming it or so. And so it's like pretty perfect to use the Seattle Seahawks then as an example, because it's like, well, then there you go. They were able to do it. So if we're going to use the past as an indicator, well, then there you go. They did it. Boom. Just have Jalen Hurts not throw an interception at the goal line. Money. There you go. The good news is the Eagles have the tush push unless they ban it. And then, boom, you do it. But I just don't have such a strong desire to kind of keep going in circles. And the truth is, and the reason why I these types of graphics just make my head want to explode, because like, we can have real conversations about some of the players that they lost. We could have real conversations of like, and I even had this take where I'm like, yeah, Saquon Barkley did have an unbelievable season, and so to think that he's going to be able to repeat that, you typically don't have a historic season, literally the greatest season in NFL history, and then just do it again. That's typically not how these things work. So I am expecting them to kind of have a pullback to a degree. But it doesn't mean that they're still not capable of winning. So when Nick says, like, I don't think they'll be as dominant, right? I don't know if I expect them to be able to hang 95 points in the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl again, right? Like, I'm not expecting them to have literally one of the most dominant Super Bowl performances of all time and set the record for the most points ever scored in a conference championship game. To think that they'll be able to do that again it's unrealistic. And so I have no problem about that. But this always continues to be my problem when we talk about the Eagles, is that they then use that as a jumping off point to just kind of be like, and because of that, I doubt them. I don't believe it, right? Like that they're just somehow still not able to kind of come away with wins. When even when they had their down year, they still got to the playoffs. And yeah, they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but A.J. Brown was missing. Jalen Hurts' knee was messed up, and he dislocated his finger the week before. Jason Kelce was literally 15 minutes away from retiring. Like, there was very specific circumstances here. But they use this as a jumping off point to kind of doubt the sheer fact that the Eagles have been one of the best teams of the last decade. Look at all these other teams now. And again, I'm not going to go look this up, the defending Super Bowl champions, because I just don't have the strength, man. You guys do it if you want to, because it just doesn't really interest me. But I'm confident when you look at some of those teams, they have not been, because again, a quarter of a century is 25 years. So in the last 25 years, the Eagles have the second most playoff wins in the NFL. So if we can say that those other teams that have that won a Super Bowl and that you can't say that about those teams. You can't say that about those teams. You can say that about the Eagles. So if you want to use the past as a reference point and a jumping off point, well, then the one thing that we should say is, well, for the last 25 years, the Eagles have the second most playoff wins to only Tom Brady. So we can put it another way where it's like, unless you're Tom Brady or the Philadelphia Eagles, the chances of you winning a playoff game in the last 25 years is a lot less. So let's make statements like that. I can easily make a graphic like that and be like, look at this. The Eagles have more playoff wins than the Kansas City Chiefs have in the last 25 years. I mean, again, since 2017, the Eagles have gone to 3 Super Bowls and won 2. The Kansas City Chiefs have won 3 and gone to 4. They're right in striking distance of each other. Again, it's not an opinion. It's just at that point, that's just a mathematical fact. I mean, like, we're not cooking the books here. We're not doing anything kind of shady where we're like, well, let's just look at week 1, 7, and 15. And when we look at that, we can see that Geno Smith is actually the best quarterback in the world. Like we're not cooking the books here. We're just saying things that are very apparent. But like, using a New York Giants Super Bowl win as a reference point is kind of like, why? Using I'm trying to think of other a little bit more random teams that won Super Bowls. Walk right into this one. Manning, okay? They won a Super Bowl. The dude's neck had like 15 surgeries on it, and then he retired. I don't think that the Broncos were going to be able to repeat after having their quarterback retire. Like, like what are we doing here? So this is actually pretty great. Because this is the last, since 2000, the teams with the most playoff wins. You can see the Patriots, very specific to Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Then we got the Eagles at 20. Okay, like I keep saying, second most playoff wins. Then you got the Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Steelers. So let's look at some of these teams that have won Super Bowls within the last 25 years or so, right? We got the Buccaneers. That was with Tom Brady. Very specific scenario. We know that. They only have 9 playoff wins. Okay, Rams, they got Stafford, who won, and then that whole team got decimated with injuries. Again, a pretty specific scenario, but still, kind of like a, whatever. But again, only 11 playoff wins. The Giants, like I said, with Eli, 11 playoff wins. Colts, now this is a little bit of luck and obviously Manning. But, only 13 playoff wins. The 49ers, 14 playoff wins, 2 Super Bowls, never won. The Seahawks, who actually won the Super Bowl, only 14 playoff wins. Packers, Aaron Rodgers, we always know that was kind of a very unique situation. And then really, obviously, some of these better franchises like the Steelers and the Ravens who won Super Bowls. With Flacco, defensive era, very specific. Actually, really, both their Super Bowls kind of were definitely a lot more defensive led and more in a defensive era. But we can still put them up top there as winning and technically not repeating. I'm totally okay with that. Same thing with the Steelers. But the Steelers also had interesting things happening where they had a changing of the guard, new coaching staff, etc., etc. But if we're gonna use some of this as data, I just I'm failing to see why, especially when you look at all these teams. And you can see the massive drop off where, again, the Philadelphia Eagles, 20 wins. And if we just now go to the 11th team there, it drops down by 9 wins. That is a massive drop off. If we look at the top 10 teams with the most playoff wins, and you're going from 11, and the Patriots, obviously, they're next. I mean, again, it's Tom Brady, so we can even count them out because that's 30, which is pretty massive, obviously. But, to go from 20 to get it cut in half effectively, it's pretty crazy because you would think that if all these teams were really, really well run, you would be having it be like where it's 20 and then 18, 17, 16. Like you would see a little bit smoother of a transition, and it's really not. You really do get a steep drop off. And then again, if you just go to top 15, 7 wins, 6 wins. I mean, the bottom 12, 5, 4. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. So when you're using this collective data to prove something, well, then you have to already admit that the Philadelphia Eagles are already an outlier. Therefore, the general data does not apply to them. That's why you isolate some of these things. If we really want to start to get technical and statistical, we would say, okay, why is this? Why do we not want to use this then as a frame of reference? Because, and we already know that Nick is doing it, because he's already using the outliers of Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, which is fine. It's okay to do that. It's okay to say, hey, you know what? These have been unique quarterbacks or unique situations that their trends are wildly different than all the other teams. But my greater point right now is, well, then you have to put the Eagles don't have a Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady type situation, no matter how much you believe in Jalen Hurts, but that's a different conversation. It still is like, well, we can still admit, though, then that they are different, that they are clearly not equivalent to the Packers, the Seahawks, the 49ers, the Colts, or any of the other teams. They are in their own outlier. They are closer to the New England Patriots than the Chiefs are with Patrick Mahomes. Just a reality, man. Just an absolute reality. So, not going to get too lost in the weeds of misleading talking points or statistics or trends that really don't matter, because again, we did this all last season. Fangio's record, how did Dak Prescott look with Kellen Moore compared to without Kellen Moore? Saquon Barkley, Nick Wright, Saquon Barkley only had one good year with the New York Giants, and after that he wasn't good. When they talked about all the players that they lost last season, in 23 going into this past season, it was, Jason Kelce. I mean, you just think that you can replace Jason Kelce? And I was like, yes, I do think you can replace Jason Kelce. In fact, Jason Kelce did everything he could with the Philadelphia Eagles to ensure that replacement would work. And now we talk about how Cam Jurgens and the rest of the O-line is so amazing. It's the greatest O-line in the last century of the NFL, according to Colin Cowherd. So it's just like, well, so then that worked out pretty well for them. So it's just like to think that you can just, that we're going to just keep playing the same game again and again and again and again. I just can't do it. I really can't. Do I think that the Eagles have a walk-in, a walk-in path to repeat? Absolutely not. In fact, after the Eagles even won and things kind of died down a little bit, I came out and said, just so you know, I criticized Nick all year long for automatically putting the Chiefs at the top just because they, were repeat champions. And I said, that's ridiculous. That's not how this works. It doesn't matter how you won in 22. We're in 24 now. It's a different team, different roster. Is Kelce the same? Is Mahomes the same? Do you have the same weapons? Of course not. So it doesn't matter to me. And I'm going to take that exact same approach going into this season with the Philadelphia Eagles. I am not automatically saying, well, the Eagles have to be the top. They're the reigning champions. You can't doubt them. They beat the Chiefs by 1,000,000 points. I'm not going to do that either, because actually I like to have real, grounded, nuanced conversations about it. So it's just that's why I feel when we look at some of this stuff, it confuses the conversation, and it's just used in a way to just suck the energy out of the room and bring everything else down. And it's just because how about this? Defending Super Bowl champions, non-Brady and Mahomes teams. Okay, well, so then tell me, let's then talk about how is Brady and Mahomes different. Never have I ever seen Tom Brady get absolutely annihilated, humiliated, and dominated in a Super Bowl. Okay, well, so then, if we're going to play that game, we got to play that game, Never have I ever, truly seen Tom Brady be outdueled. Like, truly. I know Nick Foles balled, but, like, you couldn't say, well, Tom Brady wasn't good. But I saw that happen in multiple Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes. So, like, if we want to have those types of conversations and, we want to isolate some players and isolate some teams just for fun of it to try to paint a very specific argument, like, again, I'm all for it. Let's do it. Let's seriously, let's truly talk about the fundamental winning differences between Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, or about the Philadelphia Eagles and say the Seattle Seahawks, the 49ers, the Dallas Cowboys, any of the other teams. Like, let's do it. I mean, it's quite frankly, it's a bizarre thing. And this is how I know I'm right. It's a bizarre thing to even have this conversation on the back of comparing them to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm all for having this kind of fun, hypothetical conversation because it's May and I do enjoy those types of things. But we should be having this conversation in isolation just about the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles are worthy to have their own conversation. The Philadelphia Eagles should have their own conversation, unpacking about how this season can look for them. And then in a week or two, or 3 weeks, or a month, or 2 months, we got plenty of time to then have this type of, like, hypothetical conversation, because it can be fun. I enjoy being backed in a corner to try to figure out if you had to choose who will have a repeat season, what's more likely, the Cowboys to miss the playoffs or the Eagles to win a Super Bowl. That's all fun. But the problem is it's used as a jumping off point to kind of actually really do a deep dive and bring down the Eagles. And it's just like, it's unnecessary to do on the back of the Dallas Cowboys. Like, the Eagles are worthy of having their own deep conversation about it, not trying to figure out, will Dak Prescott, win more than 7 games with the Cowboys? Like, it's just, imagine, is there any Chiefs segment, when they won that they would say that? What's more likely? The Broncos miss the playoffs again, or the Chiefs repeat? Have you seen that segment? Tell me, have you seen that segment ever? More likely, the Raiders make the playoffs, or the Chiefs get back to the AFC Championship game? I've never seen that segment, not once. I rest my case. But those are just my thoughts. What do I know? I'm just a dude wearing a green shirt. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. The Eagles really are the gift that keeps on giving, man. Because people still fail to have, like, grounded conversations about it, and it just leaves the door wide open. So I'm grateful for it. I really am. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're all on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.